Morning, everybody. We were supposed to have Michael Craze this morning, but he phoned up at 6:10 last night with a chest infection and said he couldn't make it. I had a quick ring round. I spoke to Elizabeth Slade and she got in contact with John Leeson for me, and he's turned up as a replacement at the very last moment. So, would you put your hands together for John Leeson, please?
Good morning. This is the not Michael Craze show. Hi, how are you? Good, good, excellent.
My name's David Good, this is John Leeson.
So they tell me.
John, welcome to Crawley.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for coming at such short notice.
Not at all. The only time I ever see Crawley is when I'm sort of coming in to land over it, but nice to be on the ground for once, which is splendid.
At 6:10 yesterday, Michael Craze cancelled, so Steve Bentley, the organiser, had to phone around, and Mrs. Sladen suggested Mr. Leeson here, who very kindly agreed to come at very short notice, so we are very, very happy to have you here.
Splendid, thank you very much. Had Michael Craze been here, you'd have had to book a bigger room, but there we are. Right.
You started off, you're born in Leicester, is that correct?
I was born in Leicester. I'm a woollyback, they tell me. People who are born in Leicester are called woolly-backs. Not because we have necessarily woolly-backs ourselves, but border Leicester sheep. So that's why we're called woolly-backs.
And your family have a background in the church, I believe.
That's right. I was the first member of my family to escape from having to wear a dog collar. Oh no, I didn't escape from having to wear a dog collar, did I? No. It's just come to that one. Yes. Well, yes, my paternal grandfather was a clergyman in Derbyshire. My maternal grandfather was a clergyman in Leicestershire. My father was a clergyman. My uncle was a clergyman, still is a clergyman, still alive. And my godfather was a bishop. So I really had to be an actor, I think. There we are.
And you worked in a bookshop and as a hotel porter?
As a hospital
porter.
Hospital porter, yes indeed. When I left school, I didn't really know what I was going to do at all as a profession. You know, when you're that certain age, you think, well, I've got all these options open to me. The fact that they've given me so many options has actually closed my mind down in a state of spasm. What do I do? So I worked in Leicester for a while, the Leicester Royal Infirmary, principally putting people into beds and getting people out of beds and wheeling people around and things like that, until suddenly I lifted somebody who was rather heavier than I anticipated, and I had the very unfortunate situation of having to be wheeled from one end of the hospital to the other, flat on my back on a trolley in full view of everybody. I had done my back in, so that was portering. Couldn't do any more portering, sadly.
No, I'm curious, was there any pressure on by your family to join the church as well?
No, none at all.
So where does this acting desire come from?
I think I'm an actor because I've always been an actor. I find I like to hide. And when I say I like to hide, it's one of the reasons why I enjoy voiceover work so much. Because people can't see me, but I can still fill a professional requirement as an actor without having to sort of be spotted in the street or this, that and the other. Actors fall into two different schools. I'm perfectly sure of this. There are some who the last thing they want to do is to hide. They want to be seen. They want to splash themselves around masses of publicity. And I'm the other sort that just wants to sort of get on with a job, preferably licensed to be somebody else by virtue of costume or something else, whatever.
So here you are, you're doing amateur theatre in Leicester. You applied to RADA, you're accepted.
That's right.
This is about 1962, 63.
It must be. Oh, what a memory you've got. This is a wonderful interview. Yes.
And your first acting job was a voiceover for a Royal Paris film or TV show? Or
goodness me, the research this chap's done since 6 o'clock last night is unbelievable. Perfectly true. Leicester's Little Theatre is Leicester's amateur theatre. I'll just say a couple of words about that. My mother was in the company way back in the 1930s, I think. It had been going for some long time. And one of the original members of the Little Theatre Leicester was a chap called Dickie Attenborough.
Really?
He went on to even better things. So I did one or two little plays there, and then I thought to myself, well, because I naturally want to hide, I think I'll join a profession that gives me that opportunity.
And you were doing plays at Frinton-on-Sea?
That was after RADA. I did
RADA.
a couple of years at RADA. Anthony Hopkins was there in my time. A lovely actor called Ronald Pickup also.
And Jacqueline Pearce?
Jackie Pearce was there, yes indeed. Supreme Commander Pearce. She was there. Who else was there that people might know? Terry Hands. Nobody knows Terry Hands except he directed productions at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre for years and years. Lovely girl called Susan Fleetwood, who sadly died last year. Very, very sad. They were sort of my era. But out we went into the business. I think Ron Pickup and Tony Hopkins went straight to the National Theatre. A couple of other chums of mine who were playing small parts. The problem with the National Theatre has always been that if you're not cast in a really sort of obvious role, if you're playing a smaller part, it is very much like national service. You just disappear for a couple of years of your contract. I met a chum of mine some years ago, and I said to him, "Where have you been?" He said, "Oh, I've been at the National Theatre." Oh, right. I wonder why I hadn't seen you around. Nobody had seen him, because he was always carrying a staff or a sword or something or other.
And eventually you did some plays in the West End of London.
Eventually, yes.
Which must have, for you, must have felt you
It was
reached the top then, I suppose.
the progression to doing plays in the West End of London isn't absolutely, how shall I say, isn't instant. You have really to work your passage, your probationary period in the theatre as an actor before you can do any West End work anyway. What we had back in the 60s, and we have no longer, alas, is a repertory theatre system worth the name. We really don't. In all the repertory theatres throughout the country, really interesting plays could be put on, and you'd be cast beyond, possibly, your capabilities at that time. You would be stretched. You'd be learning the business, actually on stage, in front of a paying audience. And that was a tremendous, tremendous school and discipline. You can go to a drama school, and it's a bit like going to a driving school. They can teach you to pass a test, but they can't teach you to drive. The driving comes once you're out on the road and you're left on your own to your own devices.
So you're sharpening your trade, so
You're sharpening your trade, absolutely.
So for a modern actor, that must be very difficult then, if there's no...
It is. A lot of actors that we see now on television, film and so forth have had no theatre experience at all. Or if they have had theatre experience, it would have been through the, what shall I say, the fringe theatres in London. All right, very small productions, maybe very small casts, 3 or 4 people in the cast, for no money, or just expenses.
Wasn't there a little story? You were playing a Neil Simon play, Plaza Suite, and you were playing a bridegroom, I think, who was getting married. So with the matinees, you're probably about 8 shows a week, you were getting married. And didn't you actually get married in real life during one of those performances?
Yes, that's right. Yes, I did. Yes, I remember that, I think. Yes, I'm sure I do. Yes, I do remember it. Yes. Plaza Suite ran at the Lyric Theatre from in 1969. That's right, 69 it was. And I got married during the year. I was playing this bridegroom. And I said to my fiancée, I said, look, as I'm wear this in Act 3 as the bridegroom. Do you think it would be all right if I wore it in church, you know, for our wedding? You're joking! Absolutely. You're going to go and hire a suit and the whole business. So I did. I hired a suit, whole business. Got married at 10:30 in the morning at St Mary in the Little Moultons in Kensington. Did a matinee at 2:15. Most of the guests, wedding guests, were invited to come to the matinee. Complimentary tickets. It was all very lovely. And I think a lot of champagne was consumed during the matinee. And also between the shows, we had an evening show. And the evening show, to which my new mother-in-law attended, was an absolute riot, because we were all somewhat tired and emotional, I think.
That must have been a very difficult
It was a very
to actually
jolly
concentrate on the lines. I mean, you've just got married.
That's right.
A bit of alcohol probably as well.
Well, it was a jolly day. It was a jolly day, let's say that. Now, the problem was, of course, that I should have had a honeymoon. Right. Everybody deserves a honeymoon if you've just been married. It's a lovely thing to have. But I was due back on stage the following Monday because my understudy was 6'2" and as thin as a reed and wouldn't have got into the costume of my first act appearance as a bellhop at the Plaza Hotel. So it was no good. It had to be me on the Monday. So I had the shortest honeymoon anybody's ever had, I think. It was a day and a half at, where was it? Somewhere lovely in Sussex. Alfriston. Lovely little place in Sussex. Star Inn at Alfriston. A very tiring weekend and came back on Monday, I think. Yes, I remember. Yes, there we are.
Then you appeared in some TV sitcoms like My Wife Next Door, Take Three
yes.
Girls,
Yes.
and Dad's Army actually as well.
That's right. I was in the original series of Dad's Army, just as a one-off, which was wonderful, because just about every member of Dad's Army has now gone to the
Sadly,
great
no,
commander in the
yes.
sky. Very sad, very sad. But yes, it's interesting. Television sitcom went through its sort of golden period in the 1970s
Yes.
and the early 80s. We haven't got it now anymore. We've got
Very
alternative
poor,
comedians
very poor quality.
feeding into shows. We don't have that. And I'm very happy that I've sort of lived through the golden age of television comedy. I'm now writing it, I have to say, hoping to get back to some sort of status quo, but we'll come on to that later. I promise you.
You met Derek Goodwin, who you've worked with before in repertory, I think in a pub, by chance.
In a pub? What a funny place to meet a friend. Yes.
And then he offered you the...
Well, yes, I'd worked with Derek Goodwin years ago, because he, I think, originally put me up to play a teddy bear called Bungle Bear in a program called Rainbow.
Oh, goodness.
Yes, and so lo and behold,
You were Bungle.
I was the original Bungle Bear for a year, which was the most taxing part, I think, I've ever had to play physically. Because if you can imagine a studio no bigger than this room here, massive amount of lighting, because it's a kids' show, it's all bright primary colours, this, that and the other. So a lot of lighting, not very good ventilation, and a bear skin, a bear costume that was just humongously uncomfortable to wear.
And hot.
And extremely hot. I had to have salt tablets, simply because one was perspiring so much inside the costume that had I not had salt tablets, I would have passed out.
You can identify with Chewbacca in Star Wars.
Oh, do I identify with Chewbacca? My goodness, yes. In fact, the costume for Bungle Bear was designed by a wonderful Belgian chap who did the costumes for the Beatrix Potter ballet.
Yes.
Covent Garden.
So you met, getting back to the pub, you met Derek
Oh, well,
Goodwin,
yeah, right, yes. Steering me back.
and he was going to direct an episode of Doctor Who, a story.
He was going to direct a Doctor Who episode, and he said, well, I know you've done Bungle and things like that. Would you be... I've got something in mind. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. So, come in. I'm not going to tell you what it is. So about a fortnight later, my agent phones up and he says, John, he had a very grand agent I had then. Died now. John, I just had a telephone call from the BBC. So, oh yes, I know, broadcasters, aren't they? Yes. Well, anyhow, they want to know if you're prepared to play a robot dog and a virus. What shall I tell them? So I thought, what on earth is this? Ah, it must be Derek. It must be Derek who set me up with this. So I said, all right. I mean, fine, okay, it's going to be fun. It's only in for one show, so let's go for it, you know. So I was summoned to meet Graham Williams, who was then producing the show. Graham Williams had blueprints of K9 to show me. And he said, well, what do you think? I mean, can you do a voice for that? So I said, well, I suppose I could. I see it's got a sort of Scotty collar on. Do you want a Scottish voice? So he said, oh, no. Oh, no, I don't think we want a Scottish voice. So I said, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll put some funny voices down on tape, in any case, and see what happens. He said, the idea of it, really, is that K9 is the recipient of all knowledge. He's a supercomputer like there's never been a supercomputer. Anything you want to know, ask him a question and he'll tell you the direct answer. He's pretty pedantic, but he'll tell you the direct answer. But, because he's the shape he is, we want the sound of him to be as if it comes out of a tiny little transistor speaker. Something you might pick up at Woolworths or Argos or whatever. So
It's a funny little voice up here. This was K9's voice, I promise you.
the operation didn't hurt too much. So K9 spoke a bit like that.
How much leeway did you get
Oh,
to actually develop the voice yourself?
Anything, yeah, plenty. I mean, they didn't know. I mean, what do they know? What do they know about computer voices?
So you
Nothing.
give them full range to come up with a voice.
Yeah, I
you
mean,
want.
absolutely. The world is your lobster. No, that's somebody else's line.
So you decided on this like this clipped, high-pitched
Yeah.
voice.
What I originally wanted to do was to do a voice as though it were a poison pen letter. Every word was separate. It's as though it had been cut out and pasted on.
A bit like the $1 billion brain.
A bit like $1 Billion Brain, absolutely. You know, the computer
Like
there.
picture.
That's right, absolutely. That's what I originally thought. And then I thought to myself, well, this would be, of course, impossible to achieve technically. It would take far too long if they were actually going to do that. At different pitches for different words. Take forever, take years. Besides which, you can't sort of modulate when you're doing that. You need sort of the up and down of a conversational line. You know, speech patterns have a natural ebb and flow. So we went away from that, but we stayed with the high pitch,
Clipped as much as possible.
so you've actually got, as it might be, separate words in separate compartments. At the third stroke, the time will be whatever.
Now, as well, The Invisible Enemy, I think, was the first story you actually did. In Doctor Who.
Indeed, yes, Invisible
It
Enemy.
was your
Enemy.
first story. There's also Graham Williams as producer. His incoming, it was his first story as well.
Was it now? I'm not, I don't know.
Well, I believe so.
You've done the research, you know
Now-
before my time.
Sadly, Graham Williams no longer with us.
Indeed.
But I think we formed quite a strong friendship with him.
Oh yes, yeah, well, one likes to, I'm a relatively friendly sort of chap. I form pretty good friendships with all sorts of people. But Graham, I think, had a particular slant on the way Doctor Who should go at that particular time, which slightly sent the programme up.
I think the ratings were amongst its highest. at any
They
time,
were,
so-
they were. I know that as far as the K9 character was concerned, there was a great divide of opinion among Doctor Who fans then as to whether K9 was just simply another sonic screwdriver who could get the Doctor out of trouble at a moment's notice. because that wouldn't have been a very clever use of quite clever resource.
And
So-
Graham Williams brought in a lot of experienced directors for the show, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And one of them directed Stones of Blood. And there's a little story about the Stones of Blood, where an actress gave you a present or something.
Ah. Stones of Blood was filmed out in Oxfordshire at the Rollright Stones, which is a really weird part of the country. Very, very odd. There's something there. But we did this Earth-based story. How many of you know Stones of Blood? One, well, yes, quite a smattering of you do. That's right. Well, you know it was basically sort of ogre witches and nasties, and it's all very strange. So Professor Amelia Rumford, I think, was the character name, was played by a wonderful actress called Beatrix Lehman, who in her day had been a real stunner. She was one of the actresses of the 1930s. Marvellous lady. And now this was one of the last jobs she ever did, if not the very last job. And I was a sort of amateur photographer in some ways, and I took my camera around. I took photographs of other actors for Spotlight for a while when I was out of work, to get a little income. But I took my camera with me on location and took some shots of her. Fine. And these shots came out quite well. She looked quite, anyhow, she was very pleased with them. Very pleased with them. She came into rehearsals at Acton, the rehearsal rooms there, BBC rehearsal rooms, with a bag of what looked like, well, it could have been courgettes, or was it Swedes? I'm not sure. It was a greengrocer's bag, lumpy contents. She said, "This is for you, dear." So I said, "Well, thank you. Perhaps I'll eat it later." A bag of grapes or something. So I opened it up. Lo and behold, inside was a Leica camera dating from 1938.
A very rare item.
Very, yeah, indeed, a rare item indeed, but more rare in as much as it may well have been a camera given to her by Rafe Richardson way back in the 30s.
Really?
They had a sort of relationship, I think, in those days.
Now, you worked for a year on Doctor Who, and then you decided to leave. Now, it must be very difficult because, as an actor, obviously you want to get exposure. Being the voice of K9 gave you popularity, but your face wasn't recognised.
Precisely, yes. Here I'm going to go right back on what I said about actors who like to hide. Well, I mean, actors, I do like to hide, but at the same time, there comes a point when you say, I can't go on and on and on and on, spending a tremendous amount of time simply as a voiceover. I must get my face around if I'm ever going to work again.
It seems to me that every actor that works on Doctor Who, whether it's even in the title role or one of the supporting roles, typecasting is so difficult because once you've left that series, to get the work is very, very difficult. It must be even more difficult if you're the voice of K9 because...
Well, it was funny because when I was doing K9, I'd get phone calls from my agent saying, "Oh, I've got a commercial coming through, John. They want a computer voice." And it is assumed, because nobody has any imagination, bless them, that I am the only person in the country who does computer voices. You know, it is balmy, but you know, you're on a certain peg, and you're seen to be doing what you do at that particular time. It's obviously it's typecasting to a certain extent. People expect.
So it's a double-edged sword. You've got security of the job, but the longer you continue in that, the less likely you are to find a job quickly after you've left that series.
Indeed, it's like the golden handcuff. You know, because you know you've got money coming in every week, and actors don't, generally speaking, earn a fortune.
So you leave Doctor Who and then do voiceovers for commercials and...
Well, I just took a risk. I simply took a risk. I thought, well, I've got to get out. There's more to life than what I've seen on Gallifrey so far. So I can go back into the business. And I had a very, very busy and profitable year. And I thought, my goodness me, I've actually justified the risk I took. End of that year, phone rings again, and it's somebody called John Nathan Turner. Never heard of him. Who's John Nathan Turner? Oh, you're the new producer of Doctor Who. Fine, I see. Well, what's that got to do with me? Well, David Brierley has decided that he doesn't want to continue playing K9. Would you mind sort of coming back? Because we're going to phase the character out over the next, 3 or 4 stories. We'd like to see him go out properly. Could you do it, do you think? So I thought to myself, well, is it a backward step, or should I? What's to lose? What's to lose? So I did it, and I was very happy so to do. Came back and played K9 right through.
You came back again though, didn't you? Because you came back to do the 20th anniversary special as well.
Yes, I think I got a phone call pretty well like you phoned me last night, or a phone call last night to say, we've got the doctor who, there's a line for K9, can you come tomorrow? Sort of thing.
How is it working? I mean, presumably, you obviously, when you're working with a tight-knit group of actors and technicians, you get used to the way they work. Coming back to do the 5 Doctors, was it the same, was it different, or?
I'll tell you all about the 5 Doctors. The 5 Doctors was from 11:30 to about 10 to 12 in a street in North London somewhere, where they were filming, as it were, Sarah Jane's house, and K9 was stuck behind. He wasn't allowed to go and play.
So how much rehearsal time were you given for that half hour?
Rehearse, record. Get there, rehearse it, do it. Go home, wait for a fee. That was it. This is the interesting thing. Normally, I would be, in terms of the stories, I would be there physically, and in the studios, feeding in the lines actually on cue.
Well, actually on hands and knees.
Not on hands and knees, no. In a little table like this, with flaps round it like this, and a pair of headphones and a monitor to see by, and one of these sports mics, one of these lip mics. So my voice was clean fed up to the sound gallery, didn't spill over onto the open mics for the actors. They could just about hear me, just about hear me from the ambient sound coming from my corner. But I could hear obviously everything that was going through their mics. And my voice was treated initially. It was put through a ring modulator or something like that just to give it a bit of fuzz and a bit of fizz. But eventually they decided they'd take their toys away, and it was left to the actor himself to be K9's voice. So I just
Carried on clipping.
Digressing a bit, going back, wasn't there a time when Tom Bacon used to do the Times crossword?
Oh, we tried it. Oh,
and there was
we
a time,
tried to do the Times crossword.
There's a time when it was by the side of the road or something.
Oh, yes.
Passers-by, because you were talking to Tom over a
That's
radio
right.
link or something.
This was Stones of Blood, in fact. You brought me straight back to Stones of Blood again. Oxfordshire, Little Lane. I was sitting in one of these recording vans, these massive great things. I was sitting in the driver's seat, feeling very important, very high up, with a pair of cans and a tiny little monitor, so I could just about see what was going on a mile down the road where the cameras were. Tom was having some filming down there. Director said, right, let everybody take a break. It was a scene with K9 in. And Tom suddenly came through to me on my can and said, John, are you still there? So I said, yes. And of course, at the foldback speaker down there, all the locals would come to watch her.
Yes.
You got your Times with you?
Yes, got my Times.
So we did the Times crossword. Now, I couldn't see what was going on, but all the locals could see Tom sitting on the grass verge, next door to K9, working away doing the Times crossword. I'd have loved to have seen it myself.
They could hear K9 talking.
Yes, they could hear K9 thinking of
They must have thought it was a real computer dog.
Yes. Suspension of disbelief, I think it's called.
Now, after you came back again, I think, and got to do a voiceover in remembrance of the Daleks, was that?
Yes, that again I think was from probably 20 to 12 through to about lunchtime.
And
in a sound booth somewhere.
I think your last association with the series was an offshoot called Downtime, which was the...
That's
you played a
right.
DJ or
yes, I played
radio.
a character called Anthony. Sort of fluff character, really, I suppose.
This was a Yeti story, wasn't it?
Yeti story, yes. Who's seen Downtime? Oh, that's brilliant. Well, you all know about that.
And Liz Sladen was at as well, wasn't she?
She was. Oh, to name but 7. Yes. Yes, that was great fun. It was extremely cold. If you're ever going to the University of East Anglia, do take warms with you. Do wrap up well. My goodness, it was parky, to say the least.
I was amazed to find out you've done so many things in your career. You're a magistrate, you teach food and wine at adult education centres. I mean, there seems to be no limit to what you...
Well, this is one of the difficulties. If you choose a silly profession in the first place, where there is relatively little work, Equity reckon that when the business is running well, and there isn't a recession running, there's work for about 15% of the profession at any one time, which is not a very good average. Laurence Olivier was heard to exclaim once on stage in private to Albert Finney, "Albert, dear, this is no profession for an adult person." And indeed it isn't. One has to really diversify as much as possible. Actors, it seems to me, are only people. The wider the base of experience you can have as a person, that will feed in to the experiential base you need as an actor. It goes without saying. It's a bit of a cliche,
I'm curious
but
about
it's
something.
true.
I'm curious. As a magistrate, you're in a very formal legal setting, quite theatrical in a way.
Yeah, it is. It's there.
How much of a danger when you're a magistrate is it that you almost become a role, playing a magistrate? Do you find that, or do you just have to?
Interesting question. I don't find that actually, because the drama of the moment, if you like, has very real implications. When you're an actor, you are licensed to be whatever in time. As a magistrate, you are dealing with real people in real situations, and the decisions you make will affect them in some way or other, may even affect their whole lives. So it is an awesome responsibility. You cannot act in those circumstances. All right, yes, you are up there on the bench and you are speaking to a court. So your projection, you're giving, what you say is in some sense projected. And I've been helping my own local bench and the magistrates there with basically presentation in court. Some of them are not very good communicators particularly, and it's very important that what is communicated should be communicated very simply and be understandable by people you're talking to.
I'm conscious, you see, you've come from a background of churchmen. You think of a vicar or a priest.
Yep, same thing.
Giving a
right.
performance to his congregation as such, or projecting his voice. As a magistrate, okay, it's a very serious business. Someone's life
Same
or
thing.
career could be on the line, but in a way you are addressing an audience.
That's right, you are. Yes, you are. You are. So, but you don't choose necessarily to be a magistrate. It's very strange. My arm was twisted by a friend of mine who was secretary of a wine club that I ran. And she said to me once, she said, well, you know, John, you know, you're not working very much, are you? So I said, well, no, I'm not. It's perfectly true. I'm out of work at the moment. You know, you should do what I do. You know, you should do what I do. So what's that? So I said, well, I'm a magistrate. You're not, you're what? Really? You're joking. So she said, no, what do you mean? I am a magistrate. So I said, no, I couldn't possibly be a magistrate. They wouldn't want actors, rogues, vagabonds. You know, we're totally untrustworthy. You know, we're awful people. You can't, you know, skiving bunch of folks. So I said, no. But then a year later, she asked me again. And I said, my goodness me, she's serious. So I said, well, all right then, Lena, I'll come along. I'll come to your court and I'll see what goes on. And I saw what went on. And I thought, well, yes, actually, I could do this. This is something that could engage me, I could actually do a bit of help, a bit of service to other folks. It sounds a bit pretentious to say it that way, but you know, you feel you want to feed in all the time. And I then she put in all my papers for me. 6 months later, I get called to an interview at Tottenham Court Road, magistrates.
I know, it's just,
yeah,
left-hand side.
left-hand side, down a bit.
Yeah.
So I went to Glen House, or whatever it was, and I was interviewed by almost as many people on the interview table as there are sitting here in front of me now. And I was taken to bits. Talk about shreds picked off me. The most awkward hypothetical questions about what would I do if, say, my son had suddenly announced that the girlfriend that he was with was expecting a child, and what would I do? Well, I mean, he was about 15 at the time, or whatever. All sorts of things. We were given papers with cases on, and what sort of judgment would we make about a person who, an old age pensioner, for example, who had been shoplifting and had been caught for the 11th time. Would you put her in prison? What would you do? All sorts of decisions, you know, were suddenly thrust upon them. And they were just basically there to see how you ticked. There was also one of the interviewers who was a wind-up merchant. He was an agent provocateur. He really sort of put the screws in to try and make me lose my rag. But they don't do that now, unfortunately. Equal opportunities interviewing and all that sort of thing is now very much more systematized, thank goodness, because it was awful. Anyway, I left Tottenham Court Road and I danced down the road and I thought I'd never have anything to do with magistrates again. Thank God! Thank God! That was awful. 6 months later, I get a letter from the Lord Chancellor saying my name has been accepted as a magistrate. So, what a surprise!
It's probably to see how you react under pressure, though, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah. There is a lot of pressure.
It's a character study, though.
It is, yeah.
Now, with your friend Tony Marriott, you've actually written some plays, half a dozen plays or so.
You have, yes.
One of them was called Under the Bench. Was that a law?
Yes, it really sort of pokes fun at a magistrate's bench in the wilds of the West Country. And it's really the story of a naughty magistrate who wants to have a weekend in London with the rather dishy clerk. And unfortunately, the case goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. He can't get away, she can't get away. It's a farce. It's a farce. It's a silly play. But hopefully somebody's going to see it one day.
Now, I think at this stage we can open this up to some people from the audience. Is there anybody out there who'd like to ask John Leeson a question at all? Neil, have you got a question?
Yeah, I have. If you go back to, sounds strange, the TV series on the Bungle.
Yes,
Yeah.
Rainbow.
Yeah,
Yes.
Rainbow. I remember when I first came out, I used to come over to school, what the hell it is. The actual person who played,
The presenter, you mean?
not Jeffrey, no.
Ah.
I remember Jeffrey, yeah.
Yes.
He's the other one playing Zippy in George.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, oh, Lord. What's his name?
Roy Skelton.
Roy Skelton.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, Roy Skelton, yes. Oh. Because he did Daleks and all sorts of things as well, did Roy. He's a tremendous character, Roy.
Did you sort of ask any sort of questions, like once you got the job being Doctor Who, did you sort of say, oh, I'm going to give you sort of voices?
Do you know, I don't think I actually met Roy during the period that I was working on Doctor Who. During that time. Because Doctor Who was about 5-6 years after I finished doing Rainbow. That I was pre-Jeffrey. The presenter of Rainbow in those days was an actor called David Cook, who's now a writer. And he again only lasted the year. And I think, in fact, I got Geoffrey Hazy's job for him. I sort of pulled a few strings, I think, but that's between you and me and the video camera.
Do we have any other questions at all?
Yes,
You know the TARDIS?
I do.
You know how small it is on the outside? How do you get it so big on the inside?
Well, it's time and relative dimensions in space. You see, this is the most amazing thing, and it's amazing that I actually remember what it stood for. It is what you might call a leap of the imagination, really. There was a wonderful scene shot in the TARDIS in one of the stories I was in, where the designer had made a wonderful door through which you could see an old fridge with a pair of Wellington boots and a dog bowl, which I thought was a brilliant touch. But the TARDIS, yes, it is really a sort of a vessel for the imagination, I think, as much as anything else. It's also very uncomfortable when the TARDIS goes all over like that. It doesn't do your equilibrium very much good. Have to take an aspirin.
Any other questions at all?
John.
Yes.
You're going to be in Longleat August this year.
I was at Longleat last August.
This August.
I don't, well, I'm waiting. This year that's coming.
August the 2.
I may be asked. I don't know. I have to wait for invitation.
With the dog.
Yes. I was there last year, which was lovely. Lovely day. Lovely day out for everybody.
This year then. This August coming.
I don't know. My diary is empty at the moment. I shall wait for them to ask me. And if they ask me, I shall come along and go to Longleat. What have you got there? A cheque? No, not a cheque. Ah. Surname Slade, yes. Right, sure must be one. 2nd of August. Right. Well, I shall put it in my diary and hope somebody asks me to come. All right?
Let's get the organisers to actually invite
Yep.
John officially.
She'll be there.
She might be. I don't know.
Tell us.
Well, she needs to be invited, really.
They need to be invited, you see.
You look in the Dr. Who shop.
I see.
Well, I think John needs to have an official invitation before he can
That's
actually come.
quite right. That's quite
I'm
right.
sure if his diary's free.
Because you see, I might be working, mightn't I?
How much the dog cost?
Oh, I think that's a sensible question indeed.
We're on the video here.
The
so-
dog cost. The dog cost as much, I think, as a Ford Granada. Now, I don't know what a Ford Granada back in 1974 or 75 would have, when was it, 84? When would I do it? Whenever they made it cost, but that was what.
Do you mind sitting back in the seat
What,
as we're on video?
Excellent. Thank you very much for that question. Righty.
One thing I'd like to ask you is, what Tom Baker is a very acerbic, dominating personality.
Thank goodness for that, my word.
A lot of people have some stories about him. I mean, he's obviously a very fine actor. I don't think that's in question. But how did you find him?
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Because it seemed to me that Tom was perfectly cast as Doctor Who. You have really to cast somebody who strikes 13. It's no good, in my view, casting somebody who wears a suit and tie. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
You've got to cast somebody who is dangerous, who's big, whose mind works in a completely different way. Wonderful situation. I remember coming down a corridor in one of the stories, and there's the green monsters approaching from this direction, and there's the red monsters approaching from that direction, and that direction is blocked. And Tom says, as I see it, there's only 3 ways out of here. You see, and you get this sort of, wow, this man is special. No, Tom is a wonderful actor to work with, partly because of his mental energy. I've very seldom seen or worked with actors who are so mentally alert. This was interesting in working with Tom with scripts, again, because Tom would find where scripts were defective in as much as there was too much written, the scripts were too heavily sort of earthbound. He would say, right, I'm not going to say this is rubbish. Not necessarily in those terms, but why, or possibly in those terms, why don't we split this up, blow some air into it? Look, I'll have those lines. You say from there to there, and you say from there to there. And then we've got some sort of a dialogue going. We've got actually something beginning to happen. Puffing air into it, keeping the thing alert and alive. Again, working on camera, Tom was fascinating because he would always begin a scene with movement. At the beginning of the scene. If you actually look back at your videos, you'll see there's normally there's a movement at the beginning of any frame that Tom is in. It doesn't come to a static shot, but only very, very rarely, because the eye has got to move forward. Television, after all, is a visual medium, not a speech medium. Radio is best for that. The pictures we have on radio are probably the best of all, because they're our own.
Did you actually ad-lib, though, in the middle of a scene? I mean, you're obviously an actor, you have lines that affect you. Did he suddenly throw you a line that wasn't in the script? Or?
If I said no, it would sound terribly disappointing, but if I said yes, it wouldn't be strictly true either. Within the character, there is possibly room for a little bit of manoeuvre. And certainly ad-libbing or manoeuvring, if you like, is a situation that occurs in rehearsals. It shouldn't really happen on camera in a studio, simply because then the thing should be actually set in concrete, because all sorts of other interests come into play, time being the considerable one. Time is king, the clock is king in a studio. So you've got to actually do the business as it was rehearsed. But during the rehearsal process, there's no problem at all. You know, you've got to play with it. You've got to see which way it stretches. You see which way it looks best.
Now, you live in Ealing, not far from this slate, and obviously you see her quite often. Do you meet up with the other cast members occasionally?
Only at conventions. Only at conventions.
And how do you find those?
Wonderful. I mean, it's tremendous to know that there's still such a wide base of interest in Doctor Who. It's marvellous. I mean, I've been sort of, I won't say all over the world, but I've been sort of about a dozen times to the States on the back of Doctor Who, which is incredible.
How do you find the American fans then? Are they scary?
Depends where you go in the States. I think the most scared I've ever been has been in Arizona, when it was a mixed convention. They had Blade Runner working as running as well, a Blade Runner convention, which was freaky beyond measure, and all these guys kitted out in the most amazing space gear with live sidearms. With I kid you not. I kid you not. It was a very interesting weekend's convention, and the heat was again something that wasn't too clever. About 115. It melted the car park, unfortunately, but it got a lot of people really wound up. It was a funny old weekend. You probably know the story of my very first American convention. Do you?
Please tell us.
Because nobody knew what I looked like, I thought, well, how are we going to introduce John Leeson as the voice of K9? And this was a singleton. This was a one-off, like today. I mean, with nobody else from Doctor Who. No other pegs to hang the celebrity on. So I spoke to the organizer and I said, right, what you got to do is to let me wander around during the day. I'm due to appear at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so we'll have the big introduction then. But during the day, I'll wander around the dealer's room, the whole hotel complex, dressed as a fan. So I was. I got badges, I got a camera, got, you know, everything, the works, scarf, you name it. I was loaned various items. So I went around being a fan.
In character as a fan? In
character as a fan, playing a fan for a day, which was great, because I was earwigging like mad. What were they saying? You know, about John Leeson, this, that, the other. It was wonderful, wonderful. So I said to the organizer, I said, right, when it comes to the point, you will have a K9 sound-alike contest. I will sit in the audience, I'll sit where you're sitting there, in the yellow jumper, and I will put my hand up at a certain point and I'll come up onto the stage and do my impression of K9. So I think I was about 5th in line. And I went up onto the stage, and I said, "Hi, where are you from? Where are you from?" So I said, "What's your name?" So I said, "George." I said, "My name's George." Okay, George, where are you from, George? "I'm from Pittsburgh," which gave a big laugh, because this was Pennsylvania. This was Philadelphia, rather. They can't stand people who live in Pittsburgh, apparently. So that's the first laugh. So I do my canine impression, so sort of, "What's up, Doc?" or something like that. And get a round of applause, and I'm sent back to my seat again. There I am, sitting back again. Somebody else comes up, they have a go. Somebody else comes up, they have a go. And then I think the game's going to be blown, the whole thing's going to be blown, but the MC is wonderful. He says, "Okay, right, everybody who's taken part so far, come back up onto stage. What we'll do, we'll have a line of you, and we'll put hands over heads, and the loudest applause wins. You know, who's the best dog, best canine." And the little guy next to me won. Which was
You
fun.
lost the canine competition.
I lost the canine competition, but
That must have been
yet
glory.
again, no. Yet again, the MC was wonderful. He said, "Okay, right, well done, Hank, well done, that's fantastic, fantastic, big round of applause for Hank. Okay, everybody back to your seats." So we all went back to our seats. Sat down again. And he said, I've now got word that John Leeson's just arrived from the airport. He's been held up in traffic, but he is here. Will you please welcome John Leeson?" And I got up from my seat and went up to the... It is the biggest response, the biggest applause I have ever or am ever likely to get in a theatre, in a...
They didn't recognise you, the chap went up the thought that lost.
Yeah. Yes. I'd had 'em.
Are there any other
Hook,
questions?
line and sinker.
Are there any other questions at all?
Yeah. One at the back, first of all.
We were just wondering, David and I, how many programmes you played with the Daleks?
Now, it's difficult to say, because in the time I was out of the programme, because I don't know how many times K9 ever dealt with the Daleks. I don't think he liked Daleks much. I can't remember. No. I think it's a question actually you could probably answer rather better than me, curiously enough.
Sorry?
Once,
Destiny
Was
of
it
the Daleks.
Destiny of the Daleks?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, use his voice.
Ah. So I think it's about once, all right? Yes, all right. Sorry, it was another question.
Were you ever on the receiving end of any practical jokes?
I don't think I was on the receiving end of any practical jokes. There's a whole... How long have we got? This is going on...
Well, this is
wonderful. This is
Well,
stream of consciousness, but do stop me if you...
we wait to the last question, shall we, Steve? Is that all right with you?
Yeah, whatever you
Okay.
like.
Practical jokes. I don't recall having been subjected to any practical jokes as far as K9 was concerned. But in another life, if you like, as an actor, I worked with somebody called Jeremy Beadle.
In Beatles about.
In a whole string of different Beadle shows as an agent provocateur, as an innocent guy on the street who winds people up into the most dreadful situations. So I did a whole lot of that. I remember the very first one I did, which was up in the north somewhere near Liverpool, I think, where a lady's family had put her up for the show. She was really a fierce dragon of a person, she was. And she'd been complaining for years that the rusty flagpole that they'd got at the bottom of their garden was being used as a bus stop by the village bus. Nothing to do with a bus stop. And she was writing to the council about it and writing, you know, making a real fuss about it. And so the family wound her up. They said, okay, what we're going to do is going to write to the Beadle programme. We're not going to tell her, but we're going to write to the Beadle programme and have a real big bus shelter plonked right on the bottom of her garden. So they did. Daughter took mum off shopping and inserted a little microphone in her handbag. So when they came back, we pick up where mother is actually driving back over the brow of the hill, and they see, as they're coming over the brow of the hill, This JCB with a great bus shelter just being put into place. Perfect timing. I've never known anybody strike 13 as she did. She just went totally and utterly mad. She rushed into the house, pulled her husband out, and said, "What do you think this is going on?" All this going on. Absolutely livid. So we waited about 5 minutes. Then I was the man from the bus company with my clipboard, and I was getting her to sign for it. And the more reasonable I got, of course, the crosser she got. I was just saying it was a perfectly wonderful bus shelter. I have to apologise. I have to apologise because you should have had this bus shelter 6 months ago. You know. I've got scorch marks on my shirt to prove it. This is amazing.
We're going to take a break now for about an hour to have lunch. Afterwards, there's a charity raffle, and John's chosen the process for a raffle to go to...
Yes, Calibre is the name of the charity I've picked out of my head. It's a charity I work for on a voluntary basis by reading books for the blind or print disabled people, people who may have had strokes or whatever and can't read for themselves. It's talking books, principally. But Calibre run a charitable outfit in Aylesbury. I do my recordings at home, fortunately, in the back bedroom when planes to Heathrow aren't flying overhead. But it's been going for, I suppose, about 12, almost 15 years now. And I can't remember how many people they have as a sort of client base. But it does extraordinarily good work, and I recommend that you support it.
The raffle tickets are £1 for a strip of 5, and any monies raised will go to John's chosen charity. So about an hour's break for lunch. We'll come back here, have the raffle, then a few autographs, and then
Smash it.
John will be on his way.
Hooray! Thank you very much for your kind attention. Yes.